Any questions?
Go ahead, Bob. Yeah, we have about 10 minutes here for questions.
Bob Rosenblatt, National Academy. I'm not having the technical expertise of the people in this room, insurance regulators or actuaries. I'd like to translate what we've heard into a possible story from my website. Suppose I come to any of you and I say, I'm 60 years old, I have $1 million, I invest 60/40 in Vanguard, but I'm also related to Frank O'Connor's wife, so I have a grandmother who's 102. Should I then keep $600,000 in the Vanguard stocks, 20% in Vanguard bonds, and the other $200,000 buy a deferred annuity, which I won't tap until age 85? I would like to construct an example like this, so tell me, each of you can tell me if that makes sense or not.
That would be too much to put into a DIA. 200,000. I would never put 200,000 into a DIA. Mm-hmm. You know, I guess I first have to really understand more about your spending patterns. You know, what is your income requirements? Were you smart enough to wait till 70 for Social Security? You know, all of those kind of things. You know, I mean, I just hate to generalize because it is individually driven. I would just tell them to go to somebody who's who basically can.
All right, so 200,000
Sorry.
is too much.
For a DIA, yeah.
What do you think?
For a SPIA, that's different.
What he said. No. I'm really actually serious about that because I would not want to generalize in terms of how much would go into a DIA, how much there are just too many complex factors. You know, what I showed was one possible example of how something might be done in light of aggregate data on healthcare expenses. So as I mentioned, I wasn't showing a picture of any one person, and you can always move levers all across your spectrum in retirement. You can reduce expenses. You probably can't control your healthcare expenses, although the way you live and all ultimately can be some control. So trying to generalize in the way that you're suggesting, I'm this and I'm that, and how much should I put? It's such a complex exercise that I wouldn't give a number to that. So.
I don't need that.
Go ahead, Ann. Did you have any?
Do we have
No.
a third input on that? I guess not.
Go ahead.
Okay, my question really is, are insurers doing enough to educate consumers on how much money they're going to need for retirement? And let me explain my jumping in on the Guarantee Fund or Guarantee Association question. I was the senior counsel for financial and insolvency regulation at the NAIC, and the issue of advertising guarantee fund coverage has come up numerous times over the life of the Guarantee Fund Act. And industry has pretty much uniformly reacted with, we don't want that advertised. Just
Yeah,
to give
and
that some
I am aware of what the reasons are, that like stronger companies would feel that maybe it puts them at a disadvantage to weaker companies and da-da-da-da-da. Good reasons why. I'm just telling you what I hear out there on the streets.
And I'm not disagreeing with you, just providing historical context. But again, back to the question about in education of consumers by
saying,
insurance companies.
Okay, I would like to respond to that in what might be a little bit of a surprising way. First of all, I have to say I haven't studied what the insurance industry is doing overall, so I really can't tell you how much they're doing. But I do know that some do some very fine materials, and I do know that some do some things that are pretty biased. From the point of view of the consumer, I think this is a real challenge and problem of a different sort. There's a lot of stuff out there. There is stuff out there, immense amounts of stuff out there. But the consumer doesn't know what's reliable or not. There's enough evidence that when people who have a financial stake in the outcome provide education or give advice, that it's often biased. There's some very interesting work by the GAO on this. There's some work by researchers from Harvard. And so I don't see insurers as the best source for that education. I think it's actually sort of scary. I'd rather see it come from unbiased third-party sources, whether that be the Department of Labor, the state insurance departments, the Actuarial Foundation, the Society of Actuaries, the Academy. I mean, the not-for-profits. But again, and one thing that I would love to see, and actually maybe this is that you all would have some idea who could take this on, because there's so much stuff out there. It would be wonderful if there was some third party that could sort of vet the stuff and say, this is okay, this is accurate, this has some challenges, bias, we're not going to put a seal on it. Because I really feel sorry for the consumers. And even on the enough question, too, if you go to a bunch of experts, there's no agreement about what's the right answer. And for example, there's a well-known professor. There's a lot of consensus among one set of people, and there's a very well-known professor who's in the New York Times and all over the place who says that all of these other people are wrong, but there's not consensus.
By the way, my name is Doug Hartz, and my company is Insurance Regulatory Consulting Group. And really, the question was for Frank. Is there a way you could address that from the insurance IRI viewpoint?
Yeah,
I'm going to sit down now. Thanks.
Sure.
How come it's not Hartz Consulting?
Yeah. I also haven't really dissected the promotional materials in that way to see if they're. So I can't speak too articulately to what the insurance companies could do better. I do know they provide. Many, if not most of them, provide calculators, provide the means, for consumers to try to, to see that they need to save more. I think what might be even more powerful, and this alludes to what Anna was just saying, we actually did a study on the lifetime income illustrations for the participant statements, and we did that, as an IRI study, but in part to help the DOL understand what people want to see. And when we showed them sample statements with these estimates based on a few different scenarios, current values based on projected values, and we did it in a way that allowed them to put in ranges of their income, ranges of their account balance, so it would feel real to them. It would be not their balance in their 401k, but something reasonable. And then we asked them what they thought about it in a couple of different ways, and importantly, we asked them what action it would lead to them taking. And the vast majority of respondents said that it would cause them to want to save more. But we did that in a way where we gave them choices of how much more. It's very easy to say, oh, I saw this on a survey, right? But we gave them, options. Would you save 1 to 3% more of your income, 4 to 6, 5 to 7? And they overwhelmingly selected the 4 to 6. So they chose something realistic. They didn't reflexively say, oh, I'd save. You're not going to believe the way I'll save once I see that. So I think things like that. That show them in more or less real time what their savings behavior is producing or will eventually produce in terms of income, and especially the extent to which seeing those values can drive them to those calculators where they can do a more personalized analysis is perhaps even more powerful to get people to understand that they need to save more.
Yeah, I really, sorry, I won't go back up to Mike. I really did like Ann's answer that if it's from an NGO, a non-governmental organization, not the industry or the government, that it has greater credibility.
Well, and I don't think it's credibility is important, and it's also important with the content is. Frank mentioned the calculators, and one of the problems with this is people really need software. We've done some research on retirement planning software, the Society of Actuaries, retirement planning software, and post-retirement risks, and it was frightening because while it's really important for people to have good software, the first round of research, we tried to put the same case studies or the researchers did, into a variety of software packages. And those were some designed for people to use, some designed for advisors to use, some proprietary, some non-proprietary, and I believe some designed for the consumer. The answers varied greatly. We did a second round, we did it a little bit differently, but there were clearly quality control issues that hadn't gone away between the first and the second round. And I would say, especially on the software, to have some way that somebody can say it's been vetted. One of the things I fear is that so many of the people that are using the software today, unlike, I would like to say in my profession, that if you've got actuaries doing valuations, that they've at least checked out that the software that you're using is reliable, they're responsible, they understand that. I'm afraid that in the retirement planning space, it's not like that, and that there's an awful lot of people that don't really know. And, the software package did it this way. It might be wrong. It might be unsuitable. That's very scary. There's a lot of stuff that's scary. I agree with Frank that I think doing some estimates will encourage more savings. I'm just going to pop in with my solution. I think the idea of doing a big fancy calculation, but giving them a range based on the current market and saying if you had this much money at retirement age today, based on the current market, you could get about this to this. Give them the idea, there's different options, there's a competitive market, but there's some ballpark to get you to think about it, and also to let you know it's not, that estimate is very good to get you to think about, am I saving the right amount of money? It's bad to get you to decide what to do because there are all these different types of products, and competitive purchasing matters. It also matters whether you can get an institutional price. There's been comments about high commissions. Well, there's alternatives to high commissions.
And employers can deliver those.
That's right. Through
an employer plan, they can get institutional pricing. And I just want to make two comments. One, the Actuarial Foundation, which Anna noted, is just, they've got some great stuff. It's real easy to read and understand, and it's great for consumers. And if anybody here has to deal with consumers who have questions about retirement stuff, they have something called Financial Smarts, which are these newsletters. I've helped to write them. They're really basic and simple, but they really get the point across. And there's about lump sums, about different investing, about lifetime income. There's about a half a dozen of them. Great resource for individuals. And the other thing is that I think it's important, but in this whole space, that we somehow try to separate education from advice. And, education is a broad thing, and that is something the Department of Labor can do. That is something AARP can do. That is something the CFPB can do. That is something that can be done by a lot of different places, and that's a good start. The real problem is going to come down, and I can just tell you from my experience, when you sit down with people and they're retiring, this is a major, major life event. They are nervous, they are scared, they got tons of questions, and they don't even know, even though they have tons of questions, they don't even know the questions to ask. And it's troubling because I think that the advice that is delivered, from what I've seen, is almost always biased. And that's a tough solution. Sorry.
I got one question. I saw on one of Mark's slides a limitation in statute from shifting funds from a tax-deferred annuity, an IRA, to buy an investment product, like a deferred annuity. The $125,000.
Oh, that was in the QLAC. Yeah, there's a limit. Yeah.
Okay. So that applies to what types of products?
Well, that basically is if you're going to buy a longevity insurance policy under like a 401k plan or an IRA, the premium cannot exceed $125,000.
Well, but the specific point there about the $125,000 is that they're exempting you to take some of your money and put it into the QLAC
And not pay
and
royalties.
not have to be subject to minimum distribution rules, and you can get effectively more tax deferral. So they're limiting the amount of additional tax deferral, and that's a very reasonable thing.
Yeah, and $125,000 to buy a QLAC, a longevity, that's a lot of money to pay for something that may not pay. It's an insurance policy. So $125,000 is an expensive insurance policy.
So are there similar limitations on an immediate annuity?
No, because that's going to be payable immediately. So the IRS is going to collect its revenue.
And the $125,000 doesn't apply unless it only applies to being able to take the money out of a qualified plan where it's already been tax deferred and not get it messed up in terms of the taxation.
Right.
If you have, say you have millions of dollars of your own money that isn't in tax deferred accounts and you want to buy a QLAC, there's no limit on that.
Right.
Well, if we had millions of dollars, we probably wouldn't be here.
Nor would we be buying a QLAC. Probably.
Good point. Well, join me in thanking Anna, Frank, and Mark for a very informative session.